And I'm back. Another episode of the John Alite Show. Hit the subscribe button, follow, and tell me what subjects you want to hear. I'm going to give a subject today that everybody's been writing me about. So I'm going to do a talk on Vito Genovese. Vito Genovese was born in November 21st, 1897. He died February 14th, 1962, I believe. Vito Genovese came to the United States at 15 years old with his mom and dad. He had two siblings, a brother Carmine and Michael, also made guys in the Genovese family. He had a cousin, Michael, who was the boss of the Pittsburgh outfit. Uh, and Vito lived in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, very close with Lucky Luciano. So for the people that don't know, I've spoke about this earlier. He has a sister. He had a sister, Giovanna. Jeanette, I believe, was the second middle name. Giovanna was friends with my uncle Max Queso, who ended up slapping her, not knowing she was Vito's sister. And he went on the run. He went to Detroit, and he hid there because Vito wanted to kill him. I went back in that story. My uncle eventually gets spared because he married one of the bosses from Detroit who negotiated with Vito to let it go. Vito Genovese was also friendly, obviously, with Jimmy Hoffa. And the driver of Jimmy Hoffa was a guy, a fighter, pro fighter of Rosen, Jewish guy, tough guy. He was a young kid at the time. And Jimmy Hoffa used to abuse him when they were driving. He was very hard on him, always yelling at him, always talking to him. When I did the interview with Rosen, Rosen was at that time very old, couldn't hear that well. He did the interview from a hospital bed that was brought into his house, and he spoke about how nice Vito Genovese was. He would always speak to him kindly when he was driving. But there's an opposite side to Vito Genovese as the boss, and also one of the bosses and a childhood friend of Lucky Luciano's, who they were giving orders to Murder Inc. One of the guys that passed those message was Albert Anastasia, and Albert Anastasia was best friends and partners with Buck Holton, and Buck Holton was killed and set up. Buck Holder killed Riels, accused of killing Riels when he was in police custody and he was cooperating against Murder Inc. But Albert Anastasia set him up. Buck Holder ended up going to prison. He went to Sing Sing, and later on he was put in the electric chair and died. So what I'm getting at, like I always get at, the treachery of the mafia is incredible. So when people say, they're enthralled with the mafia existence and the characters of the stand up and friendship, it's actually so much complete the opposite of that. And the same thing when Genovese gets in trouble, in about 1935, he wants to move out of New York City, and he comes down to this area in Middletown, New Jersey. He buys himself a huge property, and he dresses it up in the grounds as if it was Naples, Italy, where he was from, where he was born. So he had a beautiful mansion estate. Later on, his family, after he goes and he runs to Italy, he's charged with some murders, and he takes off for Italy, and he backs Mussolini. I believe it or not, he gives about $4 million to Mussolini's cause of his reign of terror against the Italian public. And the reason why he does this, he gets friendly with his brother-in-law, with Mussolini's brother-in-law, and he gives that money to for his safety. In Italy, he didn't want to be sent back to the United States to face the murder charges. So eventually, he does go back to America, and he kills a newspaper journalist that's writing against Mussolini as another favor to Mussolini, just in case he needed to be back in Italy. So Genovese was actually, uh, like I always say, uh, nice guy to a certain point with Rosen, but when it comes to business and the street and the life of crime in the mafia is nothing but deception and uh, murder of your friends and betrayal of your friends. I'm gonna read you something from Vito Genovese and the history, so you guys can see. Um, when Vito Genovese the expanse of the heroin trade to an international level with Luciano, and a brief period during World War II when he supported Benito Mussolini, which I just spoke about. He also served as a mentor of Vincent de Gigante, who becomes the boss of the Genovese family, the people that don't know. Uh, he wanted the title of Capo de Capo, boss of all bosses, ordering the murder of Albert Anastasia and the botched hit of Frank Costello. Immediately following this, he called a Mafia summit to consolidate his power, but the meeting was raided by the police. In 1959, Genovese's reign was cut short. He was convicted of narcotics conspiracy, charged with sentenced 15 years in prison. While he was in prison, Joe Valachi was there, and Joe Valachi believed Genovese was going to kill him. So he killed a guy that he thought that Vito was sending after him. After he killed him, he became a cooperating witness, and Genovese ends up dying in 1969, February 14th. Um, he started his criminal career, Genovese, and I'll start at this. He collected money in numbers business, like most guys. He's running on the street. He's running for gangsters as a young kid. By the 20s, Genovese started working for Giuseppe Joe Masseria, the boss of the powerful Manhattan gang that would evolve into the family that was eventually led by Charlie Luciano. Charlie Luciano was his best friend. They were growing up since they were kids together. They started working together with Brain Rothstein, who immediately saw the potential, the windfall of prohibition, which he funded these guys to get into their own bootlegging business, and obviously was kicking back to them. So when they got in the alcohol business, Luciano, Frank Costello, and Genovese started their own company, financed, like I said, through Rothstein. In 1930, Genovese was indicted in counterfeit charges. The police found $1 million of counterfeit currency in Bath Beach, Brooklyn. Genovese allegedly murdered Gaetano Reina, the leader of the Bronx-based gang. Reina had been a Masseria ally, but Masseria decided to kill him after he began to suspect him of secretly helping Masseria's arch rival, Brooklyn gang leader Salvatore Maranzano. Now, all these guys keep flip-flopping positions from who their bosses are, who they're friends with. By 1930, Genovese allegedly ambushed Reina as he was leaving his mistress' house in the Bronx, shot him in the back of the head with a shotgun. Masseria then took control of the Reina gang. Right in the early 1930s, the Castellamaleris War broke out between Masseria and Maranzano, and the secret deal with Maranzano, Luciano agreed to engineer the death of his boss, Masseria, in return for receiving Masseria's rackets, become Maranzano's second in command. Again, you have these guys, no loyalty to their friends, no loyalty to their bosses. They're flip-flopping and killing each other with the treachery that nobody wants to talk about the mob. This has been the existence of the mob forever. No different than what Anastasia did to Buckhalter by giving him up when he was in hiding. After the reels fell out a window, and everybody knows, obviously, there was corruption, and when they were protecting him at the hotel, he went flying out the window. And that's when there was a lot of pressure on the mob to give up whoever did it. And Buckhold was Anastasia's best friend. He told them they had a deal. They walked him in. Never got out of prison, got charged with, and eventually faced the electric chair. On April 15, 1931, Luciano had lured Masseria into a meeting where he was murdered at a restaurant called Nuova Villa, and that was in Coney Island. They played cards. Luciano allegedly excused himself to the bathroom, and gunmen reportedly being Genovese, Albert Anastasia, Joe Adonis, Benji Bugsy Siegel, and Chiro the Artichoke King drove the getaway car. Actually, the getaway car was by King. He couldn't even drive. He was so nervous that supposedly Bugsy Siegel kicked him out of the car. He's lucky he didn't kill him, and he actually drove the car. Luciano then took over the Masseria's family with Genovese as his underboss. Masseria's family, excuse me. In September 1931, Luciano Genovese planned the murder of Salvatore Maranzano. Now, this is the guy they're killing for. This is the guy they betrayed their boss for. And now they're going to kill Maranzano and take over from Maranzano. Luciano received word that Maranzano was planning to kill him, and the Genovese had prepared a hit team to kill Maranzano first. What he does is he brings in 4 Jewish guys that nobody knows their faces, and they commit the murder, and they kill Maranzano. Instead, Luciano sent to Maranzano's office, like I said, 4 Jewish gangsters whose faces were unknown. They had been secured with the aid of Meyer Lansky and Siegel. Luciano subsequently created the commission to serve as the governing body for the organized crime. Now, again, you got Meyer Lansky and Siegel, setting up the murders and sending the 4 guys to kill Maranzano. Later on in history, as time goes by, after they're in Vegas and Siegel was betrayed because they thought that his girlfriend was stealing money and he couldn't control her, and they kept warning him they're going to kill him. And they didn't threaten to kill him. They threatened they were going to oust him. And eventually they killed Bugsy when he was sitting in his living room. Somebody shot him through a window. 1931, Genovese's first wife, Donna Ragoni, dies of tuberculosis. He immediately announces an intention to marry his girlfriend, Anna Patillo, who's already married to Gerard Fernottico. I don't know how to say his name. But now he's going to marry somebody else's wife that obviously she's already married. So he kills Gerard Fernottico. On March 1932, Fernottico was found strangled to death on Manhattan rooftop. On March 28, 1932, Genovese married his widow, Anna, who was Genovese's cousin by her mother, Concetta Genovese. But listen to the tragedy. Why would you even want to marry a woman that just betrayed her husband, and her husband gets murdered, and you marry the guy that killed your husband? So each step of everybody's life is betrayal. It's not about any kind of loyalty to anything or anybody. It's about money. It's about taking somebody's woman, not taking your best friend's life, and betraying your best friend. Now, Bocca's murder is a flight to Italy. In 1934, Genovese allegedly ordered the murder of mobster Fernando Bocca. Genovese and Bocca had conspired to cheat a wealthy gambler out of $150,000. Bocca demanded his $35,000, and Genovese didn't want to give it to him. So Genovese decided to kill him instead. Instead of giving him $35,000, he kills his friend for the $35,000. Again, betrayal. On September 1934, Genovese and 5 associates shot and killed Bocca in a coffee shop in Brooklyn. Luciano was sentenced to 30 to 50 years in prison on conviction of pandering. When Luciano's in prison, Genovese becomes the acting boss of the Luciano crime family. In 1936, Genovese becomes a natural United States citizen in New York City. In 1937, fearing prosecution from the Bocca murder, that's when he takes off and he flees to Italy. At that time, he settles he's with Genovese's departure. Costello became acting boss when Genovese takes over. Now he starts bribing the fascist party of Benito Mussolini. He's friends with, I said brother-in-law, his son-in-law. And he starts giving the son-in-law drugs and cocaine. That's how he lures him. And the son-in-law introduces him to Benito. He gives $4 million to Benito, and he starts doing business with him. And he starts doing his propaganda from there in Italy and here in the United States. He's awarded the Order of Saints Maurice and Lazarus and made a commendatory after he's participating in helping create a new fascist party heading in NOLA. This is Genovese. In 1943, Genovese allegedly ordered the murder of Carlo Tresca, the publisher of the anarchist newspaper that I was telling you about earlier. He kills him as a favor to Mussolini. When he eventually comes back, the murder charges that Genovese was worried about, he ends up settling it. Guys are being killed. There's no more case. He comes back to New York in 1943. And Genovese switched sides quickly and offers his service now to the United States Army and the former New York Governor Charles Paletti. He attaches himself to the Army, accepts a 1938 Packard sedan. Attached to the United States Army, accepts a 1938 Packard sedan as a personal gift from Genovese. This is the governor. Now, he gets in with them because of money. He just switched sides from in the mob, he's switching, jumping all over. Now in the government, he's jumping back and forth. So again, this is one of the most famous gangsters around who's betrayed everything there is so far to betray: woman, country, loyalty. Uh, there is no, there is no patriotism to this guy. It's only money and power. Genovese established one of the largest black market operations in southern Italy, together with Cosa Nostra's boss, Collegio Vizzini. Vizzini sent truck caravans loaded with all the basic food commodities necessary for the Italian diet, rolling northward to hungry Naples, where their cargoes were distributed by Genovese organization. All of these trucks were issued passes and export papers by the MGOT administration in Naples and Sicily, and some corrupt American army officers even made contributions of gasoline and trucks to the operation. According to Luke Monzelli, a lieutenant in the Carabinieri assigned to follow Genovese during this time in Italy, truckloads of food supplies were shipped all over, documents certified by men in authority. Everybody was paid off, everybody was bribed in the service of Vizzini and Genovese. In 1944, Genovese was implicated in the Bocca murder by mobster Ernesto Hawk Rupolo, a former Genovese associate facing a murder conviction. He decided to be a witness against Genovese. In 1944, military police arrested Genovese in Italy during an investigation into his running a black market ring. It was revealed he's been stealing trucks, flour, and sugar for the army when Agent Orange Dickey of the Criminal Investigation Division examined Genovese's background. He discovered Genovese was a fugitive wanted for the 1934 murder. However, this was seeming little interest from the army or the federal government in pursuit of Genovese. After months of frustration, Dickey was finally able to make preparations to ship Genovese back to New York to face trial, but came under increasing pressure. Genovese personally offered Dickey $250,000 bribe and then threatened Dickey when the offer was refused. On June 2nd, 1945, after arriving to New York by ship, Genovese was arraigned on murder charges in the 1934 killing of Bocca. On the 46th, another prosecution witness, Jerry Esposito, was found shot to death beside a road in Norwood, New Jersey. Earlier, another witness, Frank LaTempa, was found dead in a cell where he'd been held in protective custody. Without anybody to cooperate with Polo's testimony, the government's case collapsed, and the charges against Genovese was dismissed in 1946. But by 1959, that's when Genovese gets hit with drug charges, and he receives a 15-year sentence. He passed away in 69, not 62. In 1969, he passes away of a heart attack. It doesn't do the whole 15. Pursuit of power is the release of custody in 46 is when, however, Castellano Noor, his underboss Willie Moretti, was willing to return power to him. This is when Costello gets shot in the head and lives. In 1946, Lance called a meeting for the heads of the crime families in Havana that December. The three topics that came under discussion were the heroin trade, Cuban gambling, and what to do about Bugsy Siegel, floundering the Flamingo Hotel projects in Vegas. So we all know what happens to Bugsy Siegel, what I talked about earlier. He gets killed, and the casinos in Cuba, once Castro comes in, is the Mafia gets cut out, which was a betrayal by the Mafia by Castro after they had an agreement prior to that with Batista. These things are for the people that don't understand. And if you follow the storyline from here to Albert Anastasia, to Costello, to Lucky Luciano, everybody, one after another, betrays each other, tries to kill each other, or kills each other for the money, for the dollar bill. Their loyalty isn't to any country, to anybody. So every time I show this on every show I've done, it's the life is glamorized, but it's not factual. This is factual, that the life is all about betrayal. It's nothing about loyalty to anybody. It's nothing about, is whoever has the power, whoever has the money, and whoever's next to that person is assassinating that person, killing that person, betraying that person, ratting on that person. No different. Famous Albert Anastasia later on is ordered dead by Genovese. And like I said, Albert Anastasia, when he's in the barber chair, that everybody's famous shooting when they kill him. But he betrayed, before that, he betrays Buckhalter. So I'm talking about Anastasia. And this is the part nobody talks about. There is no boss or boss. So you turned it down in front of everybody. If I ever change my mind, I'll take the title. It won't be up to you. Right now, you work for me, and I ain't in the mood to retire. Don't you ever let me hear this again, or I'll lose my temper. This is when, in the meeting where Genovese tried to convince Luciano to become a title boss of bosses and let Genovese run everything. Luciano calmly rejected Genovese's suggestion and said that. Now, October 51, Moretti was assassinated by the Mafia Commission. The bosses were unhappy of his testimony during the Mafia hearings and were worried with the syphilis now affecting his brain. He might start to talk to the press. Costello appointed Genovese as the new underboss. So this, again, people are replaced, killed, or shoved aside, but mostly killed. If you keep going down into history, during the 50s, Genovese started to move against Costello, and this is where I was talking about. However, Genovese needed to also remove Costello's strong ally on the commission, Albert Anastasia, the boss of the Anastasia crime family. Genovese was soon conspiring with Carlo Gambino, Anastasia's underboss, to remove Anastasia. In 1957, Genovese decided it's time to move on Costello and had come. Genovese ordered Vincent Gigante at that time to shoot Costello. He shot him once in the head, didn't finish it. He came around the wall when he shot him, and Costello lived. I was always shocked that they didn't kill Gigante because of screwing up this hit. But although the wound was superficial, it persuaded Costello to relinquish power to Genovese and retire. A doorman identified Gigante as the gunman. However, in 1958, Costello testified that he was unable to recognize his assailant. Gigante was acquitted on charges of attempted murder. Genovese now became boss of what is known as the Genovese crime family, and Anthony Stroller to the underboss. It really still, every time I talk about it, read this or any other subject comes up, that they didn't kill the Chin Gigante for this botch hit, because he didn't squarely even hit him. It grazed him. And instead of, there's a famous picture with him with the bandage Costello on his head. And I'm surprised also that he just bowed out and left and moved aside. In 1957, Genovese and Gambino allegedly ordered the Anastasia murder that I was talking about. And Costello was conspiring with Anastasia to regain power. Anastasia arrived at Park Central Hotel barbershop in Midtown Manhattan for a haircut and shave. This woman's face was covered with rags and scarves. Two men came in and shot him. Witnesses were unable to identify any of the gunmen, and competing theories exist today as to who the identities were. After the Anastasia murder, after taking control of the Luciano crime family, Costello Genovese wanted to legitimize the new power by holding a national Cosa Nostra meeting that we all know about, was up in the Appalachians. Genovese selected Buffalo, New York, and the boss and commission member Stefano the Undertaker Magandino to organize the meeting. In turn, he chose northeastern Pennsylvania crime boss Joseph Barbara and his underboss Russell Buffalino to oversee all the arrangements for it. Cuba was one of the topics of discussion. The international narcotics trade was an important topic on the agenda. The New York garment industry interests in rackets such as loan sharking to business owners and control of garment center trucking was other important topics of the agenda. And Buckholder used to control that. And, later on, Buckholder gets killed. And this is years later now. Powerful mafias from the United States and Italy convened at Barbara's estate in Appalachia, New York. The meeting agenda included a resolution of open questions on illegal gambling, narcotics, and particularly the New York City area. State Trooper Crosswell had become aware of the Barbara's son reserving rooms, and it was really actually by fluke, and it was good police work by the state trooper, that he seen that all these cars coming to town. They seen all the hotels were being booked, and they were wondering and curious why. And Barbara already had known as involved with the mafia. His son was reserving rooms in local hotels from a local butcher to Barbara's home. That made Crosswell suspicious, and therefore he decided to keep an eye on Barbara's house, and have found out many of these cards were registered to known criminals. When the mobsters discovered the police presence, they started fleeing, gathered by car and by foot. Many mafia guys escaped through the woods surrounding the Barber estate. The police stopped a car driven by Buffalino, whose passengers included Genovese and 3 other men. A roadblock as they left the estate. Buffalino, Genovese said he was just there for a barbecue and to discuss business with Barbara. The police had to let him go. They had no concrete evidence on him. Obviously, there's no law being broken by going up to anywhere and have a barbecue or anything different. Genovese testified under subpoena in the United States Senate McLean hearings in organized crime. Genovese refused to answer any questions, citing the Fifth. Luciano allegedly helped pay part of the $100,000 to a Puerto Rican drug deal to falsely implicate Genovese in a drug deal. And again, this is Luciano and Genovese are best friends, right, since they're children. And now you got Luciano allegedly helped pay part of $100,000 to a Puerto Rican drug deal to falsely implicate Genovese in a drug deal. So, in other words, he ratted. Lucky Luciano's a rat. And for the people that don't know this part either, when Lucky Luciano was 16 years old, he got pinched selling heroin. And he ratted. And his answer was later on in life, well, I was only a kid at the time when I ratted. So it's laughable. Every one of these guys betray, they rat. And these are the famous gangsters I'm talking about now. World-known famous gangsters are all rats. Cooperators, whatever word, informants. They're paying other people to rat. It's no different than them ratting. So they're telling other people to rat. For me, I'm well too familiar with this because they did this to me. They had guys ratting on me, and it was okay. In 1958, Genovese was indicted on drug charges and import and sell narcotics. The government star witness was Nelson Cantaloupes, a Puerto Rican drug dealer who claimed Genovese met with him. On April 4th, Genovese was convicted in New York conspiracy to violate federal narcotic laws. That's when Genovese, I told you, was sentenced to 15 years. He ends up going to Atlantic Federal Penitentiary in Atlanta, where he tries to run his crime family from prison. Can't happen. For instance, lawyers and organized crime experts have questioned the legitimacy of Genovese's conviction. Obviously, because of what happened, they set him up with lies. They didn't really have a case on him. It was almost unbelievable that a crime boss was directly involved in a drug operation what Genovese was accused of. But this was Luciano's doing against Genovese. In September 1959, Genovese allegedly ordered the murder of mobster Anthony Cafano. Angered at the murder attempt on Costello, Cafano had skipped the Appalachian meeting in protest. In response, Genovese decided to murder him. On September 25th, 1959, Cafano and a female companion were found shot to death in his Cadillac automobile on a residential street in Jackson Heights, Queens. So the people that are listening to this, most of this happened in all our neighborhoods. Jackson Heights is, obviously a big drug area. Back then still was in the 80s and 90s. Middlesex County is where Genovese moved. And later on, when he goes to Italy and his estate is burnt, his mansion, everything's burnt down. It became, I believe it's some sort of botanical garden of some sort at this point. And then his family ended up moving to the Highlands in Jersey. Genovese allegedly ordered the murder of Anthony Strollo. Strollo was part of the plot that put him in prison, put Genovese in prison. His body was never recovered. They never found it. Strollo disappeared. After Genovese in 1962, an alleged murder threat from Genovese propelled mobster Joe Valachi, who's a very famous cooperator, one of the biggest ever, one of the biggest, most popular ones, coming out of Italy. Joseph Valachi into the public spotlight. Genovese supposedly accused Valachi, also imprisoned in Atlanta, of being an informer and gave Valachi the kiss of death. In July, Valachi supposedly mistook another inmate for a mob hitman and killed him. A $100,000 bounty was for Valachi's death and had been placed by Genovese. After receiving a sentence for that murder, Valachi decided to become a government witness. In 1964, Rapolo's body was recovered from Jamaica Bay, Queens. His killers had been attached to two concrete blocks. His killers had attached two concrete blocks to his legs, tied his hands. It was widely assumed that Genovese had ordered Rapolo's murder for testifying against him in the 1944 Boca murder trial. So at the end of this is, I read some of it and I told you some history behind it. The end up is just what I said. If you go through exactly everything I said about each one of these guys and leadership and their friendship, if you could show me where all of them didn't betray each other, all of them killed each other, they killed their friends, they ratted on them, they sent other guys to rat on them. And the history of the mafia, when people are in denial of this loyalty thing that people talk about. Usually the only people that talk about loyalty in the mafia are the ones that are wannabes. They're not real guys. They don't even understand the street. So the treachery of this life is betrayal. And all these organizations all had police in their pockets. So if they knew where their warehouse was of liquor in the Prohibition days, they would tell their guy and their guy would go raid it with other police. This is the history of the mafia, the real history. Forget The Godfather, forget The Bronx Tale, forget any of these other movies you watch. I go through this all the time, and I read history to you, and I tell you what my knowledge of how I know of who I know them from. And I heard these stories since I'm a little kid, and you would hear from Charlie Luciano, Blackie Luciano, who was Lucky Luciano's cousin. My father and my uncle's partner was a made guy with the Gambino family. And I've been raised around him since I'm 3 years old. Great guy, nice guy. And I say that about certain guys. I say that about, gentleman Joey Scopo, Sr., that was murdered, killed in front of his house, was one of the nicest guys around. Tough guy, gentleman. And if these guys were ever in any other part of in life, they would have been CEOs of major companies. Unfortunately, they followed the wrong way of the street, end up cutting their life short. Their family suffered through their deaths. And the reason why I do these shows, they are interesting. I try to get away from them. I try to talk more about, things that matter in the street. And I'm talking about our families, family values, patriotism, President Trump, Jack Ciattarelli, who's running for governor in New Jersey. And I talk about the guys that care about the public and the future of our kids, the future of our country, and really positive things that, is more important to me. God, I like to talk about the pro-police stuff. I like to talk about the veterans, the ones that sacrifice themselves for the freedom of all of us in this country. And some of the nonsense that the left-wing ideology of craziness is just not acceptable. You have people that are talking about these gangs like MS-13 or this gang from Venezuela, Trinidad, that they have no regard for life. And you have these left-wing Democrat communists, in my opinion, that speak up for them as if they're, first of all, they have no due process. They came here illegally. They're not American citizens to get due process. So when they talk about due process, they should have said that during January 6th when they didn't give due process. Doesn't matter what you think they did. Doesn't matter if they did it. They didn't receive due process. That's where they should have been coming out and campaigning. Instead, they take our taxpayer dollars and they go over to El Salvador and try to threaten the El Salvador president what to do with his citizens and tell them they're going to force them to come back. They don't care about them. They don't care about those citizens of America. Forget about they care about these El Salvador kids, people that are breaking the law. They only want them here for their own power so they can have these fake votes, so they can use them and give them fake Social Security numbers where we're paying for it. And they're not giving it to our children in our inner cities, our neighborhoods, And it's ways for them to funnel money to themselves with robbing our taxpayer money. And that's really what it's about. It's about the same thing I'm talking about with the mafia. It's about them stealing. It's about them funneling money. It's about these fake uh, companies they're putting together and washing money through each company where it doesn't go anywhere. It's about these nonprofits. They're stealing billions of dollars and rewarding themselves contracts and shifting the money to different other companies, entities that nobody works for, no money passed through. Just money passed through, no kind of business is going through those companies. So this is really it's just mob tactics that these left wing fanatics are better at than the mob actually. All right, everybody. I hope you liked the show. Uh, Subscribe, hit the button, ask questions. Go to F and Pizza in Landis Avenue, Vineland. Check out F and Pizza. It's a great name. I put up some of their shirts. They have merchandise, hats, shirts. Go buy them. Go check out the pizza down there. And it's really, I got to tell you, if you're in Brooklyn, if you're any of the top pizza areas, pizza places, this is one of the best pizzas around. And you won't be disappointed if you go there. All right, everybody, have a great day. God bless you. See you.